let's go through my bracket for the NCAA tournament. Here's the deal, guys. I'm not anticipating too many upsets, but I do think there's going to be some upsets. There's going to be a lot of chalk, where the best team will win. However, I hope that there's way more upsets. There's normally way more upsets in the men's game than the women's game, but we'll go through it together. Okay, we're gonna start off with Regional 1, where I think UCLA takes down whoever they face. They're either facing UC San Diego or they're facing Southern. I think either way, they take them down. Just no one can stop Lauren Betts, and that's going to be that. For Richmond versus Virginia Tech, I think this is sort of a toss-up of sorts, but I do give the nod to Virginia Tech. For Ole Miss versus Ball State, Ole Miss's defense is just great. So, we'll take them over that. Baylor, Grand Canyon, I think Baylor dominates. Florida versus George Mason. I think that the only reason George Mason will lose is because there's just no one that can stop Taniyah Latson, and I think she's just going to dominate in this one. So I have Florida State winning. LSU versus San Diego State. LSU. Harvard versus Michigan. So I am going to say that Harvard is going to get the dub, partially because I want to upset. Partially because I want to upset, and I think this may be one of those games that is like a huge question mark game of, can Michigan State stop Harmony Turner? Like, Harmony Turner, we may end up seeing her get, I wouldn't be surprised if she gets 40 points in this first round game to make some noise. So I'm gonna say Harvard over Michigan State. Also, NC State versus Vermont. I think NC State takes that. We're gonna stay in this in this Region 1, and then we'll move on to the other ones. All right, Harvard versus NC State. NC State has it. I think it's too much. It's too much firepower for NC State. You got Zoe Brooks, you got Isaiah James, you got Sanaya Rivers. Like, it's quite a bit, and it's gonna be too much for Harvard. For LSU versus Florida State, I think this is going to be a very, very fun battle, but ultimately a healthy Flau'jae Johnson and a healthy Anissa Morrow, which supposedly they're going to be healthy enough to play, will ultimately take the cake, and LSU will beat Florida State. For Ole Miss versus Baylor, I'm going to say that Coach Yo is about to do her best to shut down Aaronette Vonleh, and Ole Miss takes the cake in that game. UCLA versus Georgia Tech. I'm saying UCLA. Okay, now we are in the Sweet 16, and I have UCLA versus Ole Miss. UCLA will win that because, again, it's Lauren Betts. Like, she's too good. Too unstoppable. Unless she gets in foul trouble, and then maybe it's a different thing. Maybe it's a different thing. All right. Then we have LSU versus NC State. I'm actually going to give the nod to LSU. I am going to give the nod to LSU. I think it's going to be a battle of a game. It's going to be a close game. I think basically the only easy game that LSU is going to have is that first round game. Second round against Florida State is going to be tough, but they're going to get the dub. Because, again, you just have the big three. You just have the big three of, Flau'jae, Anissa, and Michaela Williams, right? So that's going to be a great game, but ultimately LSU's going to win. Between LSU and NC State in the Sweet 16, I got LSU winning that one. Again, because of the big three that they have, and I just don't think that NC State is just going to be able to get over the hump and get the dub over them. So yeah, I have in the Elite Eight, I have UCLA versus LSU. Now that's one side. Let's get to the other side. Who they gonna be? Who's gonna be the teams that they end up facing? All right. So South Carolina versus what is it? Tennessee Tech, right? Yeah. I have South Carolina winning that one. Utah versus Indiana. I think this is a toss-up type of game, but Indiana just gets the nod. Because I think they just have a little bit more size on them. Alabama versus Green Bay. Bama. I think y'all are gonna be surprised about Alabama in the NCAA. I think they are absolutely gonna make some noise. Maryland versus Norfolk State. I have Maryland ultimately winning that one. Diamond Johnson's fantastic. However, I think Maryland just has a little bit too much. All right, West Virginia versus either Columbia or Washington. West Virginia. JJ Kennerly is a beast. North Carolina versus Oregon State. I do have North Carolina winning that one. Even though I would love for the Oregon State Beavers to get that upset, I just don't think it's likely. It would be fun, though. It'd be fun if we had an upset on that one. All right, Vandy versus Oregon. Vandy will win because Michaela Blakes is just about that life. Duke versus Lehigh. I think Duke wins that one. Duke versus Vandy. This is going to be a battle. This is going to be a fun battle. However, defense is going to win out, and Duke will pull through. West Virginia versus North Carolina. Toss up. However, I want to say West Virginia, but I also think North Carolina can win. I think this is a toss-up. So I'm gonna just say North Carolina. However, it's shaky. It's a shaky one. All right, Alabama versus Maryland. I do believe that Alabama's gonna win. The reason why is because injuries. Cheyenne Sellers is not fully healthy, and because of that, I think Alabama takes them down. I do. A fully healthy Maryland, yeah, they wouldn't lose to Alabama, but a hobbled Maryland would lose. So yeah, Alabama beating Maryland. All right, and then of course South Carolina beats Indiana. So we have in the Sweet 16, we will have South Carolina versus Alabama, and we will have North Carolina versus Duke. Well. In this one, I have Duke ultimately beating North Carolina, and I have South Carolina beating Alabama. All right. So, in the Elite Eight, I have South Carolina versus Duke and UCLA versus LSU. Okay. Now let's go down to the bottom of the bracket. I have USC beating UNC Greensboro, Cal beating Mississippi State, Kansas State beating Fairfield, Kentucky beating Liberty, Iowa versus Murray State. I got Murray State winning. Like this is going to be a big upset, I guess. Murray State is a offensive juggernaut. They are a team that shoots the lights out. That all they do is shoot. I believe they're leading the NCAA in points scored per game. They are a team that can go off and just drain shot for shot. And Iowa's defense in the interior is good, but outside is a little suspect. And I think that Murray State they're gonna do their thing in this one. Ultimately, I do have Murray State beating Iowa. Now, Murray State is not a good defensive team. They're not. However, I think they are just going to, their offense is just going to be supercharged, and it's going to make up for Murray State's lack of great defense. Because pound for pound, shot for shot, I think Murray State wins. So Murray State will beat Iowa in the first round. That will be an upset, maybe. Maybe if you want to call it an upset. But yeah, I do have Murray State beating Iowa. All right. Then we have Oklahoma versus Florida Gulf Coast. I have Oklahoma winning that one. Oklahoma State versus South Dakota State. Oklahoma State. And UConn will beat Arkansas State. All right, UConn versus Oklahoma State. I mean, UConn just has too much. they just have too much. So they are going to beat Oklahoma State. For Murray State versus Oklahoma, because Defensively, as I said, Murray State doesn't have it. So while shot for shot, they're going to take down Iowa, in my opinion, I don't think they have a chance of beating Oklahoma because they're just going to get destroyed in the paint. Destroyed by Reagan Beers. So, yeah. Murray State wins the first round, lose in the second round. All right. And then Oklahoma versus UConn. UConn just has too many weapons. Too many. You got AZ, you got KK, you got Paige, you got Sarah Strong. Like, you just, like, you got the dub. You got the dub. All right. And then we have Kansas State versus Kentucky. Kentucky will get the dub on that one just because the Clara Strack and Georgia Amore connection is real, and it is fire. It is fire. USC versus Cal. I have USC winning that one. USC versus Kentucky. Ultimately, that's going to be a really big battle. It's going to be a fun game. However, USC will take the cake in that one. And then let's go to the other side. We have TCU versus FDU. We got TCU, I think, is going to pull that off. Louisville versus Nebraska. This is a question mark. I'm not really sure. Like, I really don't have a sense totally on who's going to ultimately win this. I think this is going to be a battle. I think this can go either way between Louisville and Nebraska. I'm likely just going to say Louisville. However, I wouldn't be surprised if the Cornhuskers pull that off. Notre Dame versus SF Austin. Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame is going to right the ship. They're going to right the ship, and they're going to get back to the Notre Dame that we saw earlier in the season. Michigan versus either Iowa State or Princeton. Ultimately, I think Iowa State beats Princeton, and then Iowa State versus Michigan. Michigan all the way. All right, Ohio State versus Montana State. I do have Ohio State winning that one. Tennessee versus South Florida, Tennessee. Illinois versus Creighton. Another huge toss-up. I do ultimately think Illinois gets the dub. Texas, of course, either beats High Point or William & Mary. Texas versus Illinois. I got Texas. Tennessee versus Ohio State. Ultimately, guys, I think Tennessee is going to get the dub because of just the fast-paced offense that they run and the full court press. I think it's going to work. Tennessee looked exhausted by the end of the season into the SEC tournament, and I think ultimately all that rest that they got is going to be big for them, and they're gonna be able to take down Ohio State. All right. And then let's continue on down. Who would they end up facing? We have Michigan versus Notre Dame. I do have Notre Dame winning that one. That's going to be a big battle, though. Like, literally. Like, Silosaurus and Olivia Olson, they're not going to go down without a fight. But ultimately, Notre Dame, I think, just has too much firepower from their starters to not lose that game. And Louisville versus TCU, I do have TCU winning that one. Notre Dame versus TCU, I got Notre Dame. Yes, Sedona Prince is big, and Notre Dame is going to struggle to stop them. I do think Notre Dame is going to struggle to stop Sedona, right? She's really good in terms of being a post player that's, yes, big and can score inside, but also someone who can actually knock down some mid-range jumpers and whatnot. However, I think that defensively, I think Notre Dame is gonna lock down Haley, and they're gonna ultimately get the dub on this one. So I have Notre Dame over TCU. And then with Texas versus Tennessee, ultimately, guys, to be honest with you, I kind of see this as a very close game. Texas, to me, is suspect. Very, very suspect. And if we can see Tennessee, like, step up on the defensive end and play defense in a half-court set, similar to how South Carolina plays some defense, I don't know. I don't know, guys. Like I think that'll be I think that'll be a fun battle. Let's look at the head to head between Tennessee and Texas. They played earlier this year with Texas barely getting the dub. I think this game is a toss up for for kicks. I think I might end up saying Tennessee because I think it's gonna be a very close game. I don't think this is a game that like Texas is easily gonna get it. If Tennessee can actually play some real half court defense, like the reason why Tennessee's defense is really good is because they have some great full court defense. But half court defense, can you pack the paint consistently? If you can, I think you get the dub over Texas. So I'm gonna just say Tennessee. Okay, I'm gonna just say Tennessee for right now. Tennessee versus Notre Dame. I got Notre Dame winning that one. And USC versus UConn. UConn wins. All right. So in the Elite Eight, going into the Final Four, we have Notre Dame and UConn. And then we have, I think UCLA is going to beat LSU just because Lauren Betts is too good. And South Carolina versus Duke. I think South Carolina is going to get that one. So in the Final Four, as of right now, now here's the thing. My mind continues to change around this in terms of who may get upset in the Sweet 16. But my Final Four is pretty solid, I would say, between South Carolina versus Notre Dame and UCLA versus UConn. Ultimately, in this one, I do have South Carolina just being too much, way too much for Notre Dame. And UConn versus UCLA, I think UConn has it. Because here's the deal. Yes, UCLA is great. Yes, they have Lauren Betts, who truly, I don't believe anybody in women's college basketball can guard. I don't believe anybody can guard Lauren Betts. I don't. However, or anybody currently in college can guard Lauren Betts. However, UCLA sometimes are their biggest enemy in terms of their guard play. And yes, Lauren is going to eat. However, I think the guards for UCLA are going to get cooked by UConn. And ultimately, that's the biggest thing. That is the biggest thing. So, UConn is going to take down UCLA. The reason why, guys, when the brackets were revealed and all that stuff, and you had coaches complaining about where they were and whatnot, the reason why Gino was like, hey, we're going wherever they play us, wherever they put us, is because Gino knows UConn has a really good shot to get into the championship. Like, he was looking at that and like, oh, we could beat this team, 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 we can go all the way to the Final Four and the championship game. And I'm going to tell you this. We're going to see another rematch. UConn versus South Carolina. And to be honest with you, yes, we saw earlier this season, South Carolina kind of get embarrassed of sorts. They kind of got embarrassed when they played against UConn. And to be honest with you guys, yes, South Carolina is mad about how they played against UConn. They are. They're mad about it. But I'm gonna tell you this. At this moment, now I'm waffling around it. Like my mind just continues to change. Not about who's making it to the championship game, but my mind waffles around who's gonna win that game. And right now, at this exact moment, I have the slightest nod to UConn. I think this is a date with destiny for UConn. Ultimately, this is Paige Becker's last year. I think all is going to be put out on the table, and ultimately UConn has so many pieces that they are going to win. Now, I can absolutely see South Carolina winning as well. Like I think this is a toss-up of sorts. This is a huge toss-up. But I'm gonna tell you this. I think this UConn team is peaking at the right exact moment. And to me, a huge X factor is going to be AZ Fudd. AZ Fudd, Yes, we all know Paige Beckers is going to do her thing, facilitating the basketball, scoring some points and all that stuff. We all know Sarah Strong is going to look really, really good down low. AZ Fudd and her ability to knock down 3-point shots, that's going to be the determining factor on if UConn actually wins this championship. Right now, I have UConn winning. Right now, I do. I think it truly is a date with destiny, in my opinion. But we'll see. Here's the deal. I'm cool with being wrong, and I y'all know this. I am very much cool with that, and I will admit it. Right? If I'm like, hey, I was wrong on this one, that's fine. But this is what I think at this exact moment. Now, again, I really do think it's going to be UConn versus South Carolina in the championship game. If South Carolina wins, I won't be surprised. But right now, I have the slightest edge to UConn. I think it's going to be probably like a game that's determined by like 5 points. I think it's going to be 5 points, right? So, yeah, I think they're just it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be a whole lot, but it's going to be a fun game. It is going to be a fun game, guys. We will have a bracket challenge. I thought I would have it created before I went live, but shortly I will put it in my communities tab where we can actually like go through the brackets, and y'all can submit y'all's, and then we can see who ultimately is the best. All right. Mike Boy says South Carolina are just deep and have someone at every position. They do. This is a very, very deep team. However, and it's true, yeah. UConn, pound for pound, UConn cannot compete at all with the firepower on the bench for South Carolina. They can't. We all know that, right? You got Joyce Edwards, you got Malaysia Fulwell, you got Tessa Johnson, you got a lot of talent on the bench for South Carolina. However, I do think this is a game where the starters for UConn, they basically playing the majority of the game. They're playing the majority of the game, and ultimately, you just see them play out of their mind, right? And truly, I think they're just going to go crazy for Paige because it's her last year, and because she's likely going to be the one UConn superstar to never actually win a championship. Like I think this is about to be fire. This is about to be fire. The starters are going to basically play the entire thing for UConn. And yeah, the bench will cook for South Carolina, but I don't think it'll be enough. But we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm right. Who knows? But either way, I wouldn't be surprised if South Carolina wins either, because they are a fan-freaking-tastic team. All right. Okay, thank you so much to Clamp for the super chat. Says Carolina has to dominate the boards versus UConn. Yeah, they do. They do have to dominate the boards. That's going to be a key one. But if UConn's threes are going down, I mean, it's kind of hard to stop that. Anyway,